What is happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. We had an afternoon slate. We've now got a night slate to break down. There's an NBA slate today, which I don't know how much you've looked at the NBA schedule, Matt. Do you know this could be the final two-game slate of the year? It might be nothing but one-game slates from here on out, depending what happens in the games tonight and going forward. So something to be paying attention to for tonight. If you guys have been wanting to play more NBA DFS or you're lamenting the end of the season, this could be the final chance to play a two-game slate there. So, yeah, I see Elway's Army saying nice lineup going there, Greg. Yeah, I've got some good early baseball lineups for the early slate. Doing quite well on that one. So, yeah, it's going pretty well, the early one, and hopefully we could replicate some of that success on the night slate here. We've got some weather concerns to touch on. It's also another – these are my ideal size slates, Matt, where there's ownership, where you can make some decision points, and we could leverage a little bit based on the ownership. And we'll be walking you guys through all of that as we go here. Do us favors you're watching. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're sponsored by Sleeper. Matt, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Played this early slate, so hopefully that turns out well. I didn't play Michael King, as I was saying, so hopefully I am in for some good surprises when we get off the show, I guess you'll put it. And yeah, I love days like this where we get two like 6 to 8 game slates. It just is really fun.
Yeah, and one thing I think we should touch on right before we start here is we've got this game between the Twins and the Yankees, and Pablo Lopez is one of the premier pitchers on the slate. And then as far as the offenses in this game, we've got the Yankees offense, not all that popular because they're going up against Pablo Lopez, but the Twins are projected for 7% ownership as a team against Marcus Stroman. Matt, there's some weather that is in the possibilities here. We got a chance of rain. So what are you going to be doing with this game? Do you have any kind of definitive reads now? Is it wait and see what happens in a little bit? Because this is one of these kind of iffy situations.
It is. As of right now, it looks like it should be okay. That said, I don't think you have to play anything from this game. Like Pablo Lopez is always going to be in play, but very tough matchup. Same can be said for the Yankees bats. They're always in play. Very tough matchup. Stroman and the Twins look similar. I never really use Stroman, but I don't like to pick on him. Minnesota, I prefer against lefties. So I'm not going to take it out of my pool because of weather. I just don't really love any side of it anyways. How about yourself?
Yeah, let me go ahead and look at what I have right now as far as my initial exposures here. And yeah, I've got exposure to Pablo Lopez, a little bit underweight to the field. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in a second. But yeah, across 150 lineups, I do find Pablo Lopez, who's somebody who I would find a difficult time getting away from. And then as far as offenses go, at least as of right now, I don't have exposure really to the Yankees or the Twins. I have 3% Yankees stacks and 2% Twin stacks. So if the game is iffy, I'm already underweight to Pablo Lopez as is. I'm underweight to both stacks. If this is a game that really ends up being 50-50, I don't feel like I have to play anything here.
100%. Like we see this eye to eye. Lopez is always a pitcher. Like even regardless of the matchup, you're going to have interest in because he's so good. But the matchup is bad enough where, like, with weather concerns, I don't have to play him. I'm with you.
Got Richie Burdell in the chat says, again, top pitchers don't work out. Happened today for the early slate. I mean, Brandon Pfaadt is one of the top pitchers on the early slate. He was fairly popular. Not like he was uber chalk or anything, but he was one of the top projected pitchers on the slate and also was one of the most popular pitchers. And I imagine it's pretty difficult to do well without him.
The thing is, all popular spend-up pitchers aren't one. Like, Michael King today comes with more risk than like Dylan Cease did yesterday, who, while Cease wasn't amazing, he still got you like 20 fantasy points because he struck out so many guys. I'll go back to Chris Sale last night. People say spend-up chalky options don't do good. Like, Chris Sale was amazing last night.
Yeah.
It just stands out when they don't do well because it's surprising. Like, Zach Wheeler against Miami was surprising, and that stands out in people's mind. But I don't think that that's like any more true than it's been at any other time.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the slate, I'm just looking at the fantasy points and the ownership here. Brandon Pfaadt is the 4th most popular pitcher on the early slate, and he's crushing it. Garrett Crochet was the second most popular pitcher on the slate. He was nearly 50% owned, depending what contest you're in. Anyway, I mean, even higher than that. Some spots Crochet was as high as like 60+% owned. So I mean, at least early today, not every single chalk piece is going to be good all the time. But if your just MO is, hey, I'm never going to play a chalk pitcher, you're probably going to lose, because then you wouldn't have played Crochet today. You wouldn't have played Fott. You wouldn't have played Chris Sale. Chris Sale was incredibly popular last night. So I kind of echo what you're saying there, Matt, which is, yeah, a lot of times people be like, oh, the chalk just doesn't work out as a pitcher because, yeah, it doesn't work out every single time. But I mean, go look at the top. Who are you playing at pitcher? If you're only playing low owned guys today, who are you going to? The low owned guys. Were there any low owned guys who were like significantly good on the early slate at pitcher? I mean, Rogers was good.
Gomber's probably, yeah, Rogers and Gomber's probably doing okay, but Rogers was good. But that's almost irrelevant to this. Like, there's going to be cheap. I don't mean to even cut you off at all. It's just we're saying the same thing. There's always going to be like cheap random pitchers that do good, and there's always going to be expensive popular guys that don't do good. But the majority of time, that's not going to be the case. You just don't remember that because that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, once again, you just look at the early slate, and yeah, there were some contrarian pitchers who were okay, but the best pitchers were the popular guys on the early slate. If you didn't play Brandon Pfaadt, if you didn't play Garrett Crochet, you're probably in a bad spot for the early slate. So if you're looking at tonight's slate and you're looking at the pitcher, well, actually, there isn't really that much chalk for the early slate, for the late slate. Now that I'm looking at it, as we're about to start getting into it, because on the high end here, the ownership is very spread out, Matt. We've got, if we're looking at, let's look at all the pitchers who are 8,400 and above and just group these guys together. Almost all of these guys have about comparable ownership. We've got Pablo Lopez's project for 26% ownership. That could swing depending what ends up happening with the weather. But for all intents and purposes, I think it makes most sense for us to approach this as if that game is going to play. Tanner Houck is 24% owned. Framber Valdez is 35% owned against Oakland. Then you got Marcus Stroman at 4% ownership. Then Charlie Morton at 24.4%. So once again, if you guys are of the opinion that you can't play chalk, well, then you have to play Marcus Stroman because everybody else is like the same ownership here on the high end. And as far as the low end guys, there's also nobody who's all that popular. 18% going to Lance Lynn, 23% to Taj Bradley, 20% to John Gray. That's pretty much all the popular spots on the slate. But let's start by talking about those options, 84 and above, talking about Morton through Pablo Lopez. Who's your favorite pitcher in this price range, Matt?
Probably Valdez. I don't love it, but he's priced right. You know, a lot of these guys are similarly talented pitchers. Lopez is the most talented in my opinion, but we've already talked about him. I think you can make the case Valdez is the second most talented. You know, certainly Houck has had a better year, but taking what they've done in their careers. Oakland has been feisty lately. A lot of that's been against right-handed pitching. Valdez, as we know, like doesn't give up any power at all. I like the matchup. The ownership's there, and like it will probably be higher in the higher dollar single entry stuff, but I don't really care. I do think he looks like the best guy, and you can poke holes in basically every pitcher on this slate. There's a lot of pitchers that look good, no one that looks amazing. How about you?
Yeah, so one thing to note about Framber Valdez, he did get hurt early on in the season. It was, what was it, like his second start of the year? He got hurt after that, had a long layoff. So that might lead some people to think there's concerns with his pitch count, how deep he might work into the game. That might have been true his first couple starts coming off the injured list. 5 innings against the Rockies, 5 1/3 innings against the Mariners. But last time out against the Detroit Tigers, 7 innings, 2 earned runs, 4 strikeouts for Framber Valdez. I'm not all that different from the field on him. He's projected for 35% ownership. I'm right around that mark. I have him in 37% of lineups right now. Probably my biggest concern with Valdez is just he isn't generating swing and misses or strikeouts this year. So he's a 3.64 ERA, 4.18 expected ERA. Those are okay numbers, but it does get a little bit concerning. He's a career low 18.9% strikeout rate here. So as far as the slate goes, it's a smaller one, and I'm going to be getting to Valdez, but I just think the ownership is about appropriate there.
I'm with you. And like looking at his underlines a little bit, they're not even as good as his actual numbers. Like I will say, if weather wasn't an issue, Lopez would be my top guy, but it is.
Yeah, and maybe that. Well, I'll ask you this then: if the weather clears up and it ends up being that an hour from now, hour and a half from now, as we're approaching lock, and the weather just totally clears up at that point, would Lopez be the pitcher who's the highest priority for you on the high end then?
I think so, yeah. Like again, putting weather aside and saying that's a non-issue, the matchup's tough for sure. But there's strikeouts in this Yankees lineup, and I think Lopez's upside is just significantly higher than Valdez. Lopez's underlyings are really, really good. His ERA, his actual ERA at 3.89 is whatever. 2.49 expected. I mean, his ex-WOBA is lower. He's already one of the elite pitchers in baseball. He's in good form. Yeah, I would have to say Lopez would be my preferred option. I never feel good about rostering Valdez, especially when he's high owned. So yeah, I'm kind of talking myself onto Lopez more and more, to be honest.
Let's look at the Oakland A's this year against left-hand pitching because they've been okay against righties this year. Last I looked, I think it was a 102 WRC plus, like almost an exact league average offense against right-handed pitching, although they also do strike out a ton. Against lefties, Oakland, kind of similar, 99 WRC plus, so slightly below average offense against lefties that also comes with a 24.3% strikeout rate. So looking at a slightly below average offense against lefties, that also has a slightly above league average strikeout rate, 24.3%. So it is a pretty solid matchup for Valdez. I'm going to once again circle back on something we brought up the other day, Matt, which is Oakland was expected to be so terrible heading into the season that the fact that they're right now against lefties slightly below average makes people think like, oh my God, this offense is good. But it's just because the bar was so low in terms of expectations. I still consider this a pretty good spot for Valdez. The biggest question to me is just, is Valdez going to rediscover his strikeout stuff, which just hasn't been there for the first 5 starts of the year. So ownership, I don't have any kind of real stand. I'm about in line with the field on him. You had said that if you're getting off of Valdez, your favorite pay up option in his place would be Pablo Lopez if the weather checks out. For me, boy, it's tough. I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Pablo Lopez, nothing all that extreme. But I do have a little bit more exposure to Charlie Morton at the moment than I do to Pablo Lopez. And I think that's primarily due to price points. We've got Charlie Morton is $8,400 on DraftKings at home against the Cubs. Pablo Lopez, $9,800 against the Yankees. So definitely a tough matchup for Charlie Morton, but a matchup against the Cubs slightly easier than a matchup against the Yankees. But I really think what comes into play more than anything is that $1,400 in salary savings that I'm getting from Charlie Morton. And once again, if you look at Charlie Morton's numbers, solid this year. We brought this guy up on a bunch of shows this season. 3.14 ERA, 3.52 expected ERA. He has also had a little bit of a decline in strikeout rate, but he was such a good strikeout pitcher when he was in his prime that it's not really the end of the world. Still a 24% K rate for Charlie Morton. And also, this Cubs offense is starting to be banged up. We've seen guys in and out of the lineup. So Charlie Morton, he's my second favorite pitching option in this pricing range. And I do like the $8,400 salary that we're getting, kind of not like super expensive or anything like that. Do you have any strong feelings on Charlie Morton or any other pay up pitchers?
So you've been on Morton a bunch, I feel like, in spots like this, and it's worked out well more often than not. Last start, he was really good against the Mets as a contrarian option. So I get that. But I'm also with you. It's just really hard to differentiate these guys. I think my favorite pitcher out of the bunch is Tanner Houck. And there is strikeout upside here, albeit like Tampa's been better recently. Also a fan of Taj Bradley. I think kind of the same thing with him. Tougher spot, but he's more talented than his 8K price tag implies. So I like both those guys. I wouldn't say I like them more than Morton, but I don't really like them less either. I view all those guys as very similar.
Yeah, and I mean, the field more or less does as well. Framber Valdez is a little bit more popular, but it's nothing crazy. Once again, 24% ownership to Morton, 35% to Valdez, 24% to Houck, 26% to Pablo Lopez. The only one pitcher in this range that is not picking up ownership is Marcus Stroman at 4%. And let's see, what do I have of Stroman? I have 2% of Stroman right now. It's just hard for me to be interested in him because every other pitcher in this price range has so much more strikeout upside for him. Really, the only case you can make for Marcus Stroman is that nobody's playing him. Other than that, I find it hard to find a real reason to be on. And he hasn't even pitched that well this season.
Yeah, I'm good on Stroman. Like, he's not a guy I ever play. I don't need to go out of my way to play him just because he's not getting owned.
21% strikeout rate for Marcus Stroman, 3.8 ERA, but the underlying numbers 4.72 expected ERA, 5.08 FIP for Marcus Stroman. He's walking a ton of guys this year, which is limiting his ability to work deep into games. He has an 11.8% walk rate, which is just by far the worst mark of his entire career. So then if you go ahead and you look at the game log of Marcus Stroman, he has not gone 6 innings, Matt, since April 5th. I mean, the recent starts, he's getting taken out like in 5 innings or before making it through the 6th inning, 5 2/3, 5 1/3, 4 innings for Marcus Stroman. So when you got a guy who doesn't generate strikeouts and isn't working deep into games, it's just hard to realistically find that he has any sort of upside. He's had 1 game this year where he sparked an upside, and it was against, funny enough, the Oakland A's. He had 9 strikeouts against him. That's it. He's got like 1 good fantasy start the entire season. So I'll pass on Marcus Stroman, and I get he's going to be really unpopular, but I think he probably should be. Anything else you want to say about these high-end pitchers? If not, we'll look at the cheaper guys.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, to go back to our conversation about chalk and stuff, certainly it's not always going to work out, but the reason the chalk is because they're in better spots. The reason Stroman isn't getting ownership is because he's not a very good DFS pitcher. And like you said, the only reason to get to him is because he's not getting any ownership. That's a silly way to play spots like this in my eyes.
Yeah, so Marcus Stroman, that is going to be a no-go for me. Let's look at the next grouping of pitchers and just these 4 guys, because 3 of them are popular. And then we'll talk about the punt option, see if there's anything we could mine out of that. But we've got Logan Webb at $8,300 is projected for 6% ownership. Lance Lynn at $8,200, 18% ownership. So Field getting there in a good matchup against the Los Angeles Angels. Then we've got Taj Bradley against the Boston Red Sox, projected for 23% ownership. Nobody's playing Javier Assad. Very difficult matchup for him against the Atlanta Braves. So he's 1% owned. And then we've got John Gray at $7,500. He's 20% owned. So we're looking at these pitchers, $8,300, Matt, through $7,500. Who's your preferred option in this price range?
The only guy I like in this range is Taj Bradley. And even him, like, I think he's got great stuff. He was once a highly, highly touted prospect. His last start looks good on paper, but when you like peek underneath the hood, not so much. So I like Taj Bradley more than any of these other guys, but even him, I'm not that excited about. I can't see myself playing a John Gray or a Lance Lynn over a Morton Houck or over a Morton or Houck. So I'm out on this range.
I've got some interest in both Taj Bradley and John Gray. And, you know, John Gray's numbers, I don't know when it changed, because earlier in the year, his peripherals didn't look all that great. But now he is 8 starts into the year. He's pitched 45 innings. He's a 2.36 ERA, a 2.34 FIP. His strikeout rate is also up to 25.5%. Velocity still down for John Gray, which has been a little bit of a concern for me this year. But everything else looks pretty solid for him. He's cheap. He's picking up some ownership, not crazy. And Sims are giving me a bunch of John Gray. So he's the pitcher I get to the most in this price range. So I'm overweight to John Gray. Also, I'm overweight to Taj Bradley, another pitcher who I do believe in the talent of Taj Bradley. And I'll pull up his numbers and whatnot here as well. Still only 23 years old. Last year, he was Fangraphs last year had him as the number 2 ranked prospect in the Rays organization, the number 1 ranked prospect. Things kind of went wayward there. And then a 36th ranked prospect overall in baseball for Taj Bradley was his mark going into last year. Now, why is he not there anymore? Well, he graduated. He already had his rookie season last year, so he's no longer eligible as a rookie. So last year, he didn't have the best results. 5.59 ERA, 4.45 expected ERA. But if we're talking about stuff and his ability to score fantasy points, he had a 28% strikeout rate last year, 29.2% this year. These are the kind of pitchers I'm okay with betting on. He's got arm talent. He also has shown the ability to generate strikeouts. This to me is kind of like the better version of some of these slates that we've rostered Arrighetti, Matt.
Yeah, I think Bradley's a good pitcher for sure. I like his stuff. No matter what, he's got strikeout upside. So built-in floor there. I just don't like the spot against Boston. He's been much better against right-handed pitching. So I certainly think that he's the most talented guy in this group, and that's why he's the only one I'm even considering. But even him, I think I like the other guys more.
Yeah, so those are the two guys for me here. John Gray, Taj Bradley as the mid-range pitchers that I'm getting a little bit overweight to. I think those guys are looking a little bit under-owned in our data here. And Jordan, also, if you guys are looking over in playback, you see that Jordan's got some lineups on screen for when he ran stuff through the Sims. You can see what the exposures he got with just the base settings there. So let's look at some of the cheap pitchers, and then I'll start to look also in our Discord channel, see what kind of questions we're getting. And don't forget, if you guys are a Stochastic sub, you could get access to, or anybody who's a Stochastic sub, you get access to our Discord channel. You can ask me questions whenever you want or on shows, and I will be answering those. And then also, we've got a very exclusive deal to tell you guys about. So tomorrow is PGA Championship. That's me. Do you give a shit at all about golf, Matt?
Not even a little bit.
Not
but I
even
care because you're talking about it. I care because you're talking.
Yeah. So for me, I could tell you that I enjoy golf. I played it competitively when I was younger. For DFS, I was never really particularly great at PGA DFS, so I just didn't play it. That changed, though, when we released our Sims tools for PGA. I started profiting at it, and I play it more regularly now. And because it is a major tomorrow, we're running a flash sale. So the way this is going to work, we haven't really tried this before, but this sale is only going to be good for the next few hours. So it's good during MLB Live Before Lock, it's good during NBA Live Before Lock, and it's good during our playback show. And that's it. That's the only chance you guys are going to have to sign up for it. The way it works, there's a link below in the description box. If you guys follow that link, there's a promo code already loaded in. The promo code is MAJOR, because this is one of the majors, MAJOR, all capital letters. You could sign up for any monthly PGA package and get 30% off for the PGA Championship tomorrow. So link below, promo code MAJOR. If you've been on the fence about playing PGA DFS, massive contest tomorrow. There's a Millie Maker over on DraftKings, and you could get 30% off our PGA product. Any ones you want to sign up for, a monthly package, 30% off with that link that we have below. Cheap pitchers here, Matt. Aaron Brooks is $6,500 and 1% owned. Carlos Carrasco is $6,200 and 1% owned. Griffin Canning is $5,500 and 13% owned. He's the one punt play people are getting to. And then Ryan Yarbrough, 2% owned at $5,200. Are you looking at any of these punt options?
No. I guess Canning is the one guy you can make a case for, because somewhere in there is a talented pitcher, and St. Louis is getting love. But with Canning also getting some ownership, I think I'd rather play St. Louis, to be quite honest. So I'm out on this range.
I mean, like, if I had to roster one guy, it would be Griffin Canning, just because, I mean, these other guys are just, no offense to them, but they're bums. That, like, I'm not playing Ryan Yarbrough, I'm not playing Carlos Carrasco or Aaron Brooks. You know, Aaron Brooks, the guy he was the quarterback for the Saints like 30 years ago. Now all of a sudden he's a pitcher in MLB DFS for a small slate pass for me. But I mean, see, like, Aaron Brooks is not a real prospect or anything like that. Tough matchup for him as well on the road against the Houston Astros. And Griffin Canning, 13% owned here against the St. Louis Cardinals. If you absolutely need to punt with somebody, I think Griffin Canning looks like the best option by a pretty wide margin. But, like, it's only a break in case of emergency sort of situation for me. If you absolutely need the salary savings, go to him. Outside of that, I'm not going to really prioritize him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Brooks is horrendous. Last pitch in the majors in 2022, 10.18 expected ERA. Pretty bad.
Yeah, Citizen X47 says that is a different Aaron Brooks. Yeah, I'm aware it's a different Aaron Brooks, but it's how much humor or color can I add to a MLB show? That's about it. We talk about how somebody is got the same name as somebody else.
It was you saying color there was almost a Freudian slip.
No, it wasn't. And Jake DeWitt says it's crazy how Aaron Brooks is suddenly white. People forget that. No, I mean, it's the Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson pulled something. Sammy Sosa. Have you seen Sammy Sosa recently? He looks horrific.
Oh, God, yeah, that is one of the most bizarre ones out there.
It looks like he spent too much time in the snow in Chicago, and it changed him. That's why I don't go outside. To change it, man. Let's see if we have any questions that are in the Discord channel here. Oh, good point. Andrew Jemison says that this is actually the Aaron Brooks that played point guard for the Rockets. Yeah, I remember. I
forgot about him too. I knew there was a third. Great call, whoever said that.
He carried me in some yearly fantasy basketball leagues when I used to play super competitive yearly leagues in middle school. What we used to do is my friends, we did 20-man leagues on Yahoo, and we would do the drafts in the bathroom during periods. Like we would all figure we'd take a lunch break we would eat lunch together, but then also we would take our bathroom breaks at the exact same time so we could all meet and everybody would make picks really quick. But yeah, Aaron Brooks was a stud back in those days. Anything else you want to
Got it.
add about the DraftKings pitchers? If not, we'll look at the FanDuel side of things and we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator.
Nope, nothing else here. I think we covered it all.
All right. So FanDuel pitchers, one thing that is very interesting about the FanDuel slate is on a single pitcher site, Framber Valdez, incredibly popular, 29% ownership going to Framber Valdez. I find his ownership to be problematic on FanDuel. Cash games, you're playing Framber Valdez. For tournaments, I would rather look elsewhere. Do you feel the same way, or would you be eating the chalk with Valdez? He's $9,200, so a little bit priced down on FanDuel, but I mean, a guy being in a third of the field's lineups when there's a lot of similar looking pitchers on a smaller slate, I'd rather look elsewhere. But what do you make of Framber Valdez? $9,200, 29% owned on FanDuel, Matt.
Yeah, I'll get elsewhere. If the weather holds there, I'd much rather play Lopez. And yeah, I'd rather get to like Morton and Houck, even though they are more expensive. It's not like Valdez is cheap. So I understand the ownership. I don't think playing Valdez is like a bad move, but I'd probably personally look to get off it.
If you play anybody else on FanDuel, they're somewhat contrarian. The next most popular pitcher, it's Pablo Lopez at 13% projected ownership. And once again, cash games. You guys are playing Framber Valdez over on FanDuel today. If I'm looking in tournaments, though, I guess I'll agree with you and go to Pablo Lopez. It does get tough because Morton's 10,700 on FanDuel. Houck is 11,000. You can really see why people are getting to Framber Valdez. It's just the price point is really driving people there. So 29% ownership, though, that's where the issue comes into play. So if I'm paying up for one pitcher, I'm going to agree with you and go to Pablo Lopez. If I'm paying down, though, Lance Lynn is 12% owned at $7,100 against the Los Angeles Angels. I love the salary savings on Lance Lynn. The only pitchers that are cheaper than him on FanDuel are the aforementioned Aaron Brooks, Ryan Yarbrough, Carlos Carrasco, Griffin Canning. That's it. He is the fifth least expensive pitcher, or the fifth cheapest pitcher, depending how you want to word it, over on FanDuel. I really like Lance Lynn in tournaments. He's not all that popular, and he's going to put you on a very different build because most of the pitchers that are picking up ownership are expensive. So if you're playing Lance Lynn, you just have access to totally different bats and stacks in the rest of the field.
Yeah, I'm with that. Again, good matchup here. The Angels aren't good. I mean, maybe they're a little feisty, but at the end of the day, they stink. So I like that call.
Shout out to Citizen X47. He says, I don't even play DFS. I just go into different streams and talk about Aaron Brooks. The Overwatch people hate me. That's very funny. That's very funny, man. Did you ever get into Overwatch at all? Do you know what it is?
The game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked Overwatch, and there was like I don't know what happened. There's supposed to be an Overwatch 2 that came out or something, and it just disappeared. I don't hear about it anymore. I liked Overwatch for a little bit. My brother and I used to play it together a whole bunch. Apparently, Citizen X47 also plays it a little bit. Maybe I'll get back into that at some point. I don't know if it's still popular, though. I tend to think not. Anything else you want to add about these FanDuel pitchers, Matt? If not, we'll build some lineups in the lineup generator.
Let's do it.
All right. Lineup generator time, Jordan. Let's start by building out DraftKings lineups. And let's do contrarian lineups today. It's a smaller slate, and I'm curious to see what we get to if we make contrarian lineups. So do contrarian for both FanDuel as well as DraftKings. I'm interested to see, does that mean we still get Framber Valdez in lineups? What does it mean for our stacks? All kinds of interesting things that could end up popping up here. All right, here we go. So first, let's look at the pitchers. So when we're making contrarian builds on DK, John Gray shows up in a bunch of lineups. I could dig it. Pablo Lopez did show up as our most rostered spend up here, Matt. So John, a little bit of things we both like. John Gray in the mid-range / cheap end there. And then Pablo Lopez is our most rostered spend up, followed by Charlie Morton. Scroll down a little bit, Jordan. It looks like when we made contrarian lineups, it got us off of, 25% there of Taj Bradley. Yeah, so it looks like building contrarian lineups, we didn't really get to Framber Valdez quite that much, right around 20%. So some, but about half of what the field has, where he is currently projected for 35% projected ownership. Makes sense to me. Framber Valdez, if you're trying to get different, still shows up in lineups, just a little bit less than the field. Let's see the stack exposures now, Jordan. Curious to see what that's looking like. Lots of Houston, Atlanta, Texas, St. Louis. Those are the 4 teams it is that we're getting exposure to as stacks in the lineup generator here. And if you guys want to sign up for it, links below in the description box. For yourself here, if you are stacking one team in a large field tournament, Matt, and then we'll talk about single entry as well, but what is the most appealing looking large field stack to you?
Definitely Houston.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be surprised if they end up as the ownership projections have them lower owned than Texas, Atlanta, and St. Louis. Not going to be surprised if they end up like the highest by a slim margin, but it doesn't matter. I think they're in the best spot. I think they're going to be under owned regardless. And in large field, they just look like the best team to get to. How about you?
I think it has to be the Houston Astros. Totally agree with what it is that we're seeing here from the lineup generator. Same in the Sims. I'm getting to the Houston Astros the most of any team. It will be interesting to figure out what we want to do in single entry, because I think they make sense for single entry as well, because this is not the most popular offense on the slate. We have the Texas Rangers projected for 11.5% ownership as a team. The Cardinals are 11% owned as a team. The Braves are 10.4% owned. Then the Astros at 9.5% owned. So this is a team, it's the 4th most popular offense on the slate, even though they have the highest top stack odds for us. Oftentimes there's a little bit more alignment between the team that has the highest top stack odds and which team is the highest owned. So Oakland A's, this is going to be my favorite team to get to in large field tournaments. And even in single entry, I think it makes a whole bunch of sense to be getting onto the Houston Astros, considering that other teams are going to be more popular. But what do you think is going to happen to their ownership in single entry, Matt? Do you think they're going to be under-owned, or do you think the ownership will end up being a little bit higher?
It's tough because I do think they look like the best stack on the board, but I think all those other stacks you mentioned also look really good. I've talked about Carrasco a lot. He stinks. I don't think he's quite as bad as Aaron Brooks, and I'd rather stack Houston than Texas, but Texas is in a good spot. I think those teams are in better spots than Atlanta and St. Louis. So I think some of the Houston bats are going to end up really popular, but not all of them. So I'm interested in getting to like every bat in this lineup. Brooks is bad. Houston's a team that can go off. I don't know where the ownership's going to lie, but I'm going to trust the tools and say Houston's going to be under-owned.
Yeah, that's where I'm going as well. Aaron Brooks is somebody who I'm looking to stack against. His numbers so far this year they're really terrible. So Aaron Brooks, who spent some time over in the KBO, I always like this. I go to the people's Fangraphs page and I try to read Korean, Matt. It's one of my new things. I'm trying to learn Korean. So Aaron Brooks' name in Korea is something brick hat. Those are what the symbols look like to me. The final one's definitely a hat, maybe a clothes hanger, actually. It's either a hat or a clothes hanger as part of his name. Either way, Aaron Brooks is back in the U.S., and it is going poorly for him. He's pitched out of the bullpen so far only this year. He hasn't made any starts in the big leagues. I was looking at his numbers here. 2022 is the last time he actually pitched in the big leagues, and he had a 7.71 ERA, 10.18 expected ERA. His KBO numbers were whatever. We have no data on this guy since 2022. Yeah, there we go. Jordan's got it pulled up there. Yeah, is that a hat or a clothes hanger? Is the final symbol in his name? It's tough to say. I'm not fluent in Korean. I'm getting there. It's a work in progress, though. What has Aaron Brooks been up to? Do you know?
Was he hurt?
Why is he not pitched since 2022?
I don't know. Didn't you say something about the KBO?
Yeah, but he hasn't pitched in the KBO since 2021.
Interesting, because he did have he pitched for Oakland in 2022. I'm not sure what
St.
his
Louis in 2022.
Oh, so Oakland before that, maybe?
Yeah, he pitched for Oakland in 2018.
Oh, wow. So way before that. I'm not sure.
Career numbers for Aaron Brooks. Once again, baseball Aaron Brooks, not the basketball or the football Aaron Brooks. 6.55 ERA, 5.39 FIP, 5.11 xFIP. I don't think he's gotten better by not pitching the last couple of years. He's also 34 years old now. There are so many red flags when it comes to Aaron Brooks here. See, minor leagues. Oh, he's been pitching in the minor leagues. How's that been going? That's been going shit too. All right, so he's toiled around in the minor leagues, Matt. He has a 4.57 ERA and a 4.71 xFIP in AAA this year. Last year, he pitched in AAA for the Padres and had a 4.95 ERA and a 5.33 xFIP. I can't imagine this is going to go well for him. You know, individual starts, anybody could get lucky, but the expectation has to be this guy's going to suck this year and then just be done pitching as a professional career. Maybe he could find work as an Uber driver or something. Maybe learn enough Korean where he could be a translator. Baseball probably not in the future for him though, based on the numbers here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with anything you said.
All right, so there we go. We're going to be stacking against Aaron Brooks today. And go back to the player exposures, Jordan. I want to see what it is that we ended up getting to for individual hitters. And I am seeing, go back, Altuve was in lineups, Trey Cabbage, Jeremy Pena. Those guys are all in like 40% of lineup. Same with Kyle Tucker, Yanier Diaz. There's Joey Loperfido. And then there were some Braves guys in there as well, Michael Harris, Matt Olson. But yeah, our lineup's really, really heavy towards the Houston Astros, which I have no issue with for this slate. I like attacking Aaron Brooks today. I don't need to shit on this guy anymore. I think that he's been talked about probably more on this show than he's been talked about in his entire life for the last couple of years. Anything else that stands out to you about these lineups, Matt? If not, we will build some baseball ones.
It worries me a little bit that Houston's going to come in more popular than we think, but that's just a worry. There's nothing I'm going to actively do about that.
And Dan06712 in playback says, Greg, the slayer of human beings' dreams. Ouch. Listen, I'm just trying to be realistic. The only person whose dreams I really want to crush are Eric's. But like Aaron Brooks, I only wish the best things for him. I wish only terrible things to happen to Eric, though. FanDuel lineups. And oh, look at that. Wait. Who is that? What is this one now? Ah, Eric looks pretty as a lady there. I'm skeptical that baby's his, though. That baby got a lot more of the Rory genes than the Eric genes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't see any. I could see why they got divorced. I don't think that. I could see why Eric got upset thinking the baby wasn't his with Rory.
Yeah.
All right.
Same.
I understand. We have difficult decisions to make there, Eric. But if we're looking at the pitcher exposures here on FanDuel, and also, did you select contrarian lineups here as well, Jordan? Cool. So let's check the pitchers. Scroll down. Let's see what pitchers we ended up getting to. If you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Framber Valdez, once again, underweight to him, though. Underweight to Framber Valdez over on FanDuel, project for nearly 30% ownership. We got 20% of them. Marcus Stroman actually popped up in lineups. I don't love that for FanDuel. I do think he's more serviceable for FanDuel than he is for DraftKings, though, just because he's $7,900 on FanDuel. And then also, if you get the quality start, the win bonus, you can kind of get there from that way. But I'm not all that keen to play Marcus Stroman today. Pablo Lopez is showing up in lineups. Scroll down a little bit more, Jordan. Yeah, there's John Gray. And Lance Lynn. Yeah, Lance Lynn at $7,100. Yeah, I'd want to be a little bit higher on Lance Lynn than just the 10% that we're getting to there. And yeah, Logan Greer says we need dong picks. Don't worry, dong picks will be coming up in a little bit here. Just looking at some lineups in the lineup generator here for FanDuel. Go to the stack exposures, Jordan. Let's see what we got to as stacks. Yeah, lots of. I think it's actually the exact same amount of Astros on FanDuel we had on DraftKings. Ton of Astros, followed by the Braves, then the Red Sox, and some Rangers and Cardinals mixed in there as well. Same deal here, Matt. I think that for FanDuel purposes, the Houston Astros also look quite good over there. It's not like Aaron Brooks is all of a sudden better on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Ownership's a little bit higher on the Houston Astros on FanDuel, but it is for all of the top stacks. Astros 15% ownership, Rangers 15%, Cardinals 12% owned, Braves 12% owned. If you're picking one team to stack on FanDuel, the ownership is looking different than it is on DraftKings, Matt. Which direction would you go to with a FanDuel stack?
That's tough because I do like picking on Aaron Brooks a lot, and the other teams I like are getting so much ownership. The Dodgers aren't really a team I'm that interested in tonight. I know that the tools would say I'm foolish for that, but I respect Webb a lot, especially at home. So they're like the most contrarian offense with the highest upside. So I will shout them out, but it's not really where I want to go. Given the ownership, I think it's just Houston. I just think it's Houston. How about you?
Yeah, I'm still most inclined to go to Houston. I think they're the best overall looking stack on FanDuel. It's tough because then you start to look at the teams that are like actually under-owned on FanDuel, where it's like, hey, this team is like 2% top stack odds, but it's tough matchups. Like, I'm not dying to stack Oakland against Framber Valdez. I'm not dying to stack the Angels against Lance Lynn or anything like that. So with that being the case, I think the good offenses are popular. Field kind of has it right on FanDuel. I think the slate looks much better on DraftKings tonight than it does on FanDuel. So I'll say the Houston Astros. It's hard to find stacks that I like that are under-owned on FanDuel.
I will say about FanDuel, like you can only roster 4 guys. So I like the bottom of the order on DraftKings. I like it just as much on FanDuel, where guys like Dubon and Myers aren't going to get as much love because they take up spots from like Tucker and Alvarez. So I think you can get different within the Houston stacks.
Yeah, I'm just looking through, see is there anything that I've missed here that might look good on FanDuel. But I mean, 12% ownership to the Braves once again, 12% to the Cardinals, 15% to the Rangers, 15% to the Astros. I think the field's kind of on the money there. So I think the ownership's really efficient. It makes the FanDuel slate pretty difficult to play. Go back to the player exposures, Jordan, and let me see here what we got for the hitters. And yeah, lots of Astros at the top here. Altuve in half of lineups. Same with Michael Harris and Kyle Tucker. Then right around 40% exposure to Bregman, Pena, and Yordan Alvarez. And then Joey Loperfido right underneath there in a third of lineup. So there we have it. That's what the lineup generator is giving us for today's slate. If you guys want to sign up for it, it is the most affordable tool that we have at Stokastic.com. It also has our player ownership, player projections in there. You could customize some of the lineups how you see fit, and also gets you access to the Discord channel. Link to sign up is below in the description box. Let's go and look at just the other options that we have on the slate. Getting back to DraftKings, Matt, we've talked about liking the Houston Astros as our favorite overall stack. What are some of the other spots that are of high importance to you that you're looking at for tonight?
So I like Texas because they're facing Carrasco. The ownership is already there. So you're not sneaking up on anyone rostering Texas. And that's why I like Houston slightly more. St. Louis against Canning. St. Louis has gotten going recently, and Canning is not very good right now. So I don't mind that one. And the one that really sticks out to me in the toughest matchup of them all, but their upside is evident in the top stack tool, is the Yankees. 6% chance to be in the top stack, 3.1% ownership. This is one where, like, again, I know people have been talking about chalk pitchers not doing well. If the Yankees get Lopez on an off day, like their upside is right up there with the Dodgers and Braves, and Astros is the highest on the slate. So I think there's a lot of opportunity cost in the Yankees, but you also could get potential delay in the middle, which takes Lopez out of the game. Like, I'm not playing because of that, but there's ways this matchup is a little bit easier than it otherwise would look on paper. So I'm going to say the Yankees is like a deep tournament stack, but other than that, Texas and St. Louis.
I like the Atlanta Braves a good amount against Javier Assad. The Braves going up against Assad. So Assad's numbers for the year are pretty good. Actually, quite good. 1.7 ERA, 3.15 FIP. Historically, though, Assad has not been all that great. And I do wonder if the field is just going to get off of Assad or get off the Braves, and they come in even lower owned than what their ownership projection is, just because Assad's ERA is good this year. So we got a Braves team, 10.4% owned, 9.6% chance being top stack on the slate. They're actually a little bit cheaper than we typically see with the Atlanta Braves as well. Let me pull up their pricing here just so I could go over all of the hitters.
Yeah, no Acuna tonight.
Sorry, what was that?
No Acuna tonight.
Yeah, no Acuna tonight, which does make the offense less expensive. But what you get in here with him being out, Michael Harris is leading off at $4,200. That's a great value play for today. Adam Duvall's in the lineup, batting sixth at $3,400. That's solid looking. Darno at catcher is $4,100. That's not all that cost prohibitive. And then towards the bottom of the lineup, like I'm not super excited to play Zach Short or Jared Kelenic or Orlando Arcia. But I mean, 3,500 RC is certainly playable. And then because you got guys like Michael Harris and like Adam Duvall and Travis d'Arnaud are not all that expensive, it's not hard to pair these guys in lineups with, say, like Matt Olson at $5,200 because for a lot of last year, if you remember the middle of the season, Matt Olson was a guy who was pretty regularly priced above 6K. I've pulled up his historical pricing here. At the end of last year, Matt, almost every single slate, Matt Olson was priced in the mid 6K range. Almost every single one. He was never this cheap last year. The last slate last season that he was priced below 6K, June 24th, he was 5,900 on a slate. He ended up hitting a home run and scored 25 fantasy points that day. That's how regularly expensive Matt Olson was. Now, he's gotten off to a slow start this year. He did homer yesterday, had a pair of hits. They were both extra base hits, a homer and a double. So that gives me a little bit of confidence that he's starting to turn it around a little bit here. It's actually crazy that Braves' record is as good as it is when like every single hitter in the lineup is underperforming relative to expectations. But Matt Olson, he's going to be fine going forward. And $5,200 is actually a value price for him. I really like the favorable pricing on the Atlanta Braves. This is my second favorite pay up stack behind the Houston Astros.
Yeah, it makes sense. Again, no Acuna just makes him much more affordable to roster. Harris has been priced down, not presuming he'd be in the leadoff spot. Well, he is. So I'm with you. Olson was priced down like right as he looked like he started to get going again. So for a little bit, he's going to be a value. And tonight, I think that's the case.
Let's look at some of the cheap offenses to see if any of like the really cheap value ones stand out. And then we'll look to see if there's any kind of leverage stacks that we're liking for the slate or anything that's really contrarian. If you had to go cheap at offense, is there any offense that's really, really cost-saving offense that allows us to pay up for whatever pitchers we like that's catching your eye at all?
Got to be St. Louis. Again, they're not good, but they've gotten going recently. Canning is not very good. So it's St. Louis. They're so cheap, they make it work.
St. Louis Cardinals and their pricing, very, very cheap. Very cheap. They're going to start going up in pricing sooner rather than later just because you could only be this cheap. If I'm not mistaken, we don't have their official lineup yet. Let me see. Yeah, no official starting lineup for them. However, let's go through just the expected starting lineup. We've got Matt Carpenter, 3K. Lars Nootbaar, 3,900. Paul Goldschmidt, 4K. Nolan Arenado, $4,300. So those are your two best hitters in the lineup, the two most expensive. Arenado, $4,300. Goldschmidt, 4K. Nolan Gorman's 3,400. Herrera's 3,300. Then you got Donovan towards the tail end of the lineup. He's 4,100. That's less appealing to me. Mason Wynn, 3,200, although he could end up hitting towards the top of the order again. And then whatever they end up doing with the final spot in the order. This is a very, very cheap offense. And I don't hate the spot against Griffin Canning either. So if I'm going to be going at the cheaper end, the answer is pretty clearly to me the St. Louis Cardinals. The one rub here is they're 11% owned. So I currently have 6% of the Cardinals. So I don't have as much exposure as the field does, but I think it's pretty clearly the top cheap stack on the slate. Are there any low owned or leverage stacks that you find to be appealing?
The Angels look decent to me. I don't think Lance Lynn is very good. I don't think the Angels are very good, which is why I agree with your Lance Lynn call, but I could see both sides of that game being in play. And then Boston. Taj Bradley has shown high upside in a lot of starts, but he's also gotten hit around in a bunch of starts. And his expected numbers in that last outing were a lot worse than his actual numbers. So I'm going to say Boston.
Yeah. I mean, that makes some sense, especially when you consider Taj Bradley, 23% owned. The Red Sox themselves, though, are 9% owned, which makes it a little tricky. Let me see. Are there any of these pitchers that I find to be particularly flammable that are projected for high ownership and then the offense coming back isn't? So here's the, like, even Framber Valdez, you want to say, hey, I'm going to stack the Oakland A's because they're leverage off of Framber Valdez. Like, that would make sense to some extent, except the Oakland A's are 5% owned. The field is actually playing Oakland today. It's not like they're 2% owned or anything. We've got the Yankees are 3% owned against Pablo Lopez. That's probably the spot I'm most inclined to get to for leverage, just because the Yankees are the lowest owned team on the slate and their offense is so good. But I don't really love anything where it's a crazy low owned spot. I think the spots that are low owned, it's for a good reason. Anything else you want to bring up as far as offenses are concerned?
Mm-mm.
All right, let me go into Discord to see if we had any questions. If not, we'll start looking for home run picks. We did get a question here. Einsteinium says, if we had to choose a pitcher to pick on tonight between Houck and Morton, who would you be more inclined to stack against, Matt? Would you stack against Tanner Houck, or would you stack against Charlie Morton?
Morton. But I think that's like, I know you'd probably say Houck, and I wouldn't argue with you. I think it's a true toss-up.
Let's see. Tampa Bay Rays. I have 3% Rays stacks. And then let's see. As far as Cubs stacks, I also have 3%. The answer is neither. I'm underweight to both of these stacks. Like, I guess if I had to choose one, damn, Houck has been so good this year, though. I'd say the Cubs, I guess, but I'm not very high on either offense today.
It's funny. Like, I didn't even look at the tools when I answered that. They have literally the exact same top stack percentage and ownership. Tampa has 0.1% a chance higher of being the top stack. So they're exactly the same.
They're very similar looking, and they're picking up ownership too. There is the lowest owned offense on the slate, said it before. Yankees are 3% owned. Then you got the Giants are 5% owned. The A's are 5% owned. The Cubs are 5% owned. The Rays are 5% owned. There isn't any spot that really stands out for like crazy leverage in that kind of sense for today. So other spots that I'd be preferring to get to. And looks like there's no other questions that are coming into the Discord. So let's go ahead and do the dong of the day. Matt, who is your home run pick for today? I'll figure out my home run pick. Don't read some of the home run picks from the chat, and then we'll turn it over to NBA Live before lock. Who are you picking to go yard tonight, Matt?
Picked a good one yesterday. I'm trying to run it back. Give me Joey Loperfido did his first home run tonight. I know I've called him before. He was out of the lineup yesterday. He's going yard tonight.
I have to answer. Kyle Tucker's been incredible this year. He's like the one bright spot for the Houston Astros. Kyle Tucker's numbers this year. Let's see, what is his WRC plus at? Kyle Tucker has a 182 WRC plus, among the league leaders with 13. Actually, does he lead baseball in homers so far?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, 13 homers for Kyle Tucker. And then Ozuna, Naylor, Ohtani, Gunnar Henderson all have 12. Teoscar Hernandez, shout out Malakar. He's got 11 there. So, yeah, I think that the answer for me, it's got to be Kyle Tucker. And he's not all that popular either. Barely over 10% ownership for Kyle Tucker in what is, to me, the best overall matchup on the slate. Kyle Tucker, home run pick. That's the dong of the day. Some picks from chat. Devin Neiman's going with Yanier Diaz. We've got Michael Roundtree. Oh, some obscure ones to open up here. Michael Roundtree's got Nolan Shanuel. We've got Junior Whoppers going with Max Muncy. BD is calling out 2 homers. He's going with Seager and Lowe for today. Devin Neiman is saying he had a Nick Gonzalez earlier. Slim Lancaster's going with Trevor Larnach. CJ the Great's got Travis d'Arnaud. Malukar's going with Ryan Jeffers. William Westry's going with Jose Altuve. Jordan Klein is going with Connor Dong and Ohtani Dong. I like it. I like the Connor Wong because it's Connor Wong. We go Connor Dong, right? A little bit of fun wordplay, and you're staying on brand with your picks here, which I enjoy, Jordan. I like the commitment. I like the commitment. And then we've got Max Videos going with Alex Bregman. Caleb Garink has got Michael Bush. Chad Wiseman's got Juan Soto. Max Video wants to know who your pick was, Matt. You went with Loperfido. Yeah, correct? Loperfido?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, making sure I'm not having some sort of brain fart or anything. Yeah, he went with Loperfido. Obi-Wan's got Volpe. Einsteinium's going with Cody Bellinger. Andrew Jennison wasn't saying Loperfido. He was just telling Max Video that was who you picked. Then extra QT's got James Outman, and Hayden Klein has got Jeremy Pena. Guys, thank you very much for watching. About half the chat is picking the Houston Astros to homer, so hopefully they go off. We have a big day. Jordan deviated a little bit from the Houston Astros trend with some of his own little flavor there. We appreciate you guys all for watching. Coming up next, NBA Live Before Lock. Then after that, Josh and I are going to be sweating the games out over on Playback. And then tonight, if you guys are going to be playing PGA lineups for the Masters, I talked about that flash sale where you guys could sign up for any of our monthly packages and get 30% off. We're going to have on Playback after Josh and I finish watching the basketball games. We're going to have Eric come on with Downside of Me, Jesse, and they're going to break down the PGA slate ahead of tomorrow's major and hopefully help somebody win $1 million. So that is all the content on tap for the rest of the day, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and see you in an hour on Playback. Peace out.